Greetings, friends, and welcome to our Saturday episode of Countdown to His Coming, where we look at what's happening in the world and compare it to the Holy Scriptures. Well, today we're going to start in Daniel chapter 7, and we're once again going to read that second coming passage from Daniel, and we're going to eventually get to one in the New Testament as well. But we're going to do that in light of some things going on in the world as we're watching the beast form. We've been doing this for some time. These kind of creatures don't form overnight, but this one has been coming for some time, forming exactly as the Bible said it would, and it's frightening to say the least. So while everyone was kind of paying attention to our doddering president, who can't seem to remember names, introduced President Zelensky of Ukraine as President Putin this week at a NATO summit, tried to dispel fears about his cognitive problems in a press conference that was very heavily scripted, where he was given a list. Just call on these reporters. These are the ones that'll give you the easiest questions. And yet none of that helped anyone to feel any better about the fact that America is at a very critical time in its history. And at the head of our republic is someone who doesn't really seem to know what's going on. So while all this was taking our attention, as well as paying attention to your favorite sports stars or TV personalities or anything else that seems to get your attention here in the West, something else big was going on. Now, what's this beast going to look like? Daniel tells us a little bit about it when he questions the angel that started this whole process in Daniel chapter 7 with him. And the beast that he saw that was the last one, terrifying beast, unlike any of the rest, he wanted to know, what is this thing? The angel explains. Daniel chapter 7, verse 23. This is what he said. The fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, different from all the other kingdoms. In other words, those that were described already in Daniel chapter 7, 3 earlier ones. And it says in verse 24, the 10 horns are 10 kings who will rise from this kingdom. In other words, it's not just one king that can run this. It's a multinational operation, isn't it? Another king, he says, different from the previous ones, will rise after them and subdue 3 kings. He will speak words against the Most High. And that's capitalized in the Most High, speaking out against the God of the ages, Jesus Christ himself. No, we can't have 2 rulers here. Jesus can't be Lord if this kingdom's going to be in charge. So he's going to speak words against the Most High and oppress the holy ones of the Most High. He will intend to change religious festivals and laws, and the holy ones will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time. We've already seen those trying to change every festival and law imaginable in the 21st century. It's been right here at our doorstep, and it seems to be going around the world. Scary times indeed, but it's not like we haven't been told. But in verse 26, it says, ultimately the court will convene, his dominion will be taken away, and completely destroyed forever. So friends, you don't worry about what happens when this beast takes control. It's only temporary. Ultimately, Jesus is returning, and he will take control. But in the meantime, what are we facing? We're facing a beast that is forming all around us, but most people in the United States of America aren't paying attention and don't even know that it's happening. For example, this week I would encourage you to go to an episode of Crossroads on Epoch Times TV. And there you'll see a description, and this was put out just on July the 12th. It's very current. And it's described this way. I can't tell you what's in the whole episode, but it's some very great information that you need to grasp about what's happening in the world. But it's described this way. The Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, is pushing for a new global order under its control. The push for a new international power structure came to the forefront after a meeting between CCP leader Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin during a gathering of leaders from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now remember that name, because the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is something that has tentacles reaching literally around the world. And along with these other world organizations, like coming from the United Nations and others, trying to bring everybody together under one umbrella, this is the one that perhaps is the most frightening. I'll tell you why in just a minute. He says they now aim to create an alternative global security alliance, along with a new push for a multipolar world where the United States would no longer be the world leader. And they discuss that in depth in this episode of Crossroads. I would suggest you check it out. But let me give you just a little summary. When we describe this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, who are we talking about? Listen, it shouldn't be big news for you to understand this if you're a student of the Bible, because you know this has to happen. And you remember that when John the Apostle is looking at the things that are taking place in the end times, bringing about Armageddon, he looks from Jerusalem to the east across the Euphrates River. And that's when he sees that amazing army of 200 million men. An army of 200 million would have been ridiculous in John's day because the population of the entire planet may not have quite reached 200 million by then, maybe a little more. So for him to see something like that, be astounded by it, and write it down, a lot of folks probably thought, yeah, John, you've lost your mind here. But no, he was looking forward to a time that had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that points to the days in which we live, where those size armies actually exist today when you put together this group. In fact, at one point, a Chinese leader had bragged that if it came down to a time of war, we could put up an army of 200 million. But let's look at this particular group and see what we have. Now, I'm just going to give you some of the top nations in the Shanghai Cooperation Group here. They are Russia, the world's largest nuclear power, China, also a nuclear power, no longer the most populous nation in the world, but the second most, with over 1.4 billion people. India, India's in this group because the future seems to be all about Asia. If you want to know where all the people of the world live, India is now the most populous nation, over 1.4 billion people, but just slightly ahead of China. And they are also a nuclear weaponized country. Now keep in mind, as we keep naming these, I want to give you three more that are also nuclear. Pakistan, North Korea, and Iran, all within this group, all radical, all heavily controlled by this group on that side of the world, and they have nuclear weapons. The newest nation into this group is Belarus, that just joined. And Belarus just this week was involved in military exercises and maneuvers with China. Are you kidding? What's China doing over there in Eastern Europe? Well, they're solidifying this particular group. If you look at these nations and all the others that are connected with this Shanghai group, you'll find that they have up to 5 billion of the world's 8 billion people. Oh my goodness. And you perhaps already know that China is extending its tentacles all around the world, even into North and South America. What does this say for us? Well, it says exactly what Vladimir Putin said at the conference this past week. He said the multipolar world order has become a reality. Unipolar, which was once led by the United States as the undisputed head of this group, it's gone. And it seems to be gone because of the fractures in our own nation that don't allow us to have a sensible set of values with which we can lead the world. Matter of fact, this past July 4th was unlike any we've ever seen, when in many of our major cities there were more Palestinian flags flying than American flags. Is this an accident? Absolutely not. the turmoil going on our college campuses this year. All of it's been engineered from outside sources. The money has been flowing from the outside sources, all to do something in America that's already been done in many European nations. Someone has said just this week, after elections in Britain and France, that they both have fallen. The endless immigration of people coming in from Africa and Asia, almost all of them coming in with Muslim backgrounds, not planning to assimilate into those cultures, but planning to take them over, is now becoming a reality as far leftist, Marxist leaders have taken over in those two nations because of elections that took place here in the last couple of weeks. Britain and France now being led by leftists. And what are these leftists doing? They're all promising they're going to do one thing if they haven't done it already. First thing is they're going to recognize the nation of Palestine, a nation that never has been a nation that doesn't exist, but a nation that if you recognize them, you have to recognize the fact that they have called for the extermination of the Jewish people and the Jewish nation, because from the river to the sea does not mean we want to coexist with Israel. It means we want to eliminate it. War rages right now in the Middle East as Israel is fighting off Hezbollah to the north, and even this past week, Hamas continues to launch rockets into Israel. Hamas that's supposed to be almost defeated, right? No, it seems like not only are they still holding hostages, some of which are Americans, but they're still able to fire rockets into Israel. Why isn't the world supporting Israel against these terrorists? Well, because as you remember, I just mentioned, part of that Shanghai Cooperation Group is, yes, Iran, who's behind all of that. Folks, it seems like the world is coming to that place Zechariah said it would, where all the nations of the world, and by the way, it's a generalized statement, doesn't mean there won't be some nations holding out and standing for truth right until the end, but generally the world is coming against Jerusalem and against the regathered people of God, as he has called the Jews from all over this planet, regathered them so that they can be spiritually revived and restored, and Satan hates that. And so what's he doing? Well, he's fighting against it tooth and nail. Well, it's amazing that as we look at this beast forming, that we have now the real evidence of how it's going to conquer the world and be able to win against the impotent Western leaders that we seem to have that can't get their act together. And that comes primarily because of a brand new, at least it's brand new as far as the world is concerned, a brand new innovation called artificial intelligence. And if you go to the New Testament version of Daniel's prophecies, it's repeated in Revelation 13, you get more details. And this beast is once again on display. And Daniel, he talked a little bit about that beast, but in Revelation, it's amazing that John gets even more details about how this beastly kingdom operates in the last days to take control. Perhaps this is why we will see that war that Ezekiel prophesied in Ezekiel 38 and 39 is all the players named in that passage of Scripture are now lining up against Israel, just as prophesied. And so what do we see this beast doing in Revelation 13? In verse 11, John writes, "Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth and had two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of that first beast," which is described earlier in the chapter, "and compels the earth and those who live on it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. It also performs great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in front of people. It deceives those who live on earth because of the signs that it's permitted to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who live on the earth to make an image of the beast who was wounded by the sword yet lived. And it was permitted to give breath to that image of the beast so that the image could both speak and cause who would not worship the image of the beast to be killed." This one goes on to allow folks to have a mark in their right hand or their forehead so that they will gladly serve this beast. How do all these things happen? Well, many Bible commentators, as well as myself, when we watch this rise of artificial intelligence, began to say, wow, this is how the word in the Greek is icon, how this icon is able to speak, how in the old versions of Revelation 13, folks would say, well, there's going to be some kind of statue that magically speaks. Oh no, this is going to literally be an artificial intelligence. Maybe it will be given a personal, robotic, human-looking form, but no secrets here any longer. We've unmasked the plan, and it seems like it's coming at us full speed. In the Epoch Times this past week, there was a tremendous opinion piece. It's entitled, "We are at the beginning of an AI revolution, and an expert raises concerns." They interviewed Ahmed Banafa, a professor of engineering at San Jose State University, who said a lot of things in a recent episode that was broadcast on Epoch TV's Bay Area Innovators episode. This guy is an expert in AI and cybersecurity. He was actually ranked as the #1 voice on AI by LinkedIn in 2024. And he said that the AI revolution is happening too fast compared with other technologies. It's doubled in speed, and the number of companies that are involved in AI every 6 months. It's doubling every 6 months. Think about that for a minute. What happens here in just a short amount of time before we can blink an eye? AI is going to be everywhere. Now, you've already seen it. If you get on the computer, you've got your own browsers trying to say, let our AI assistant help you. You've already perhaps been involved and interacted with ChatGPT. In fact, as we talk about some of these, it's amazing how rapidly they have developed. In fact, he said we're at that stage of generative AI in which the application is now trained by being fed data. ChatGPT 3.5, for example, was trained on some 500 billion pieces of data. No, you can't remember that much stuff, but guess what? This artificial intelligence can. Oh, wait a minute, it gets worse. ChatGPT 4 on 1 trillion pieces of data, and the Gemini, which is the new AI from Google, on 5.5 trillion pieces of data. That keeps training and educating the algorithm in order for the artificial intelligence to have an opinion. Now, the warning flags start going up as they talk about what will happen as these operations begin to think on their own. One of those that Google had the most trouble with was a particular AI that it taught a number of languages. I think it was 4 languages. But when they went back later, they discovered that the AI had discovered a language that it really liked, was fascinated with, and learned it on its own. Now, what happens when you turn these kind of operations loose, especially in a military sphere? Did you know that's exactly what's going on today as Russia is using the war in Ukraine to help discover all the ways it can use robotic technology. The Ukrainians are even using robotic technology. The drones that are now flying from so many different nations and being produced by the millions are now a regular everyday part of warfare. This artificial intelligence idea means you must give these weapons the ability to decide when to shoot, who the enemy really is, make decisions on its own. You can see that if this gets loose, it tends to have some powerful implications for how the entire world might fall under its power, especially when AI begins to think for itself. One particular AI operation that was going on in the United States involved a soldier who continually was stopping an operation with a drone that was supposed to target a particular place. It had a particular target in mind it was supposed to take out. And the question is, finally, is that drone going to say the real problem is the human being trying to stop me from completing my mission, and begins to take out the tower controlling it and goes on to complete the mission anyhow? I mean, it sounds like an old science fiction movie. It's kind of like 2001 Space Odyssey from way back. But guess what? Hal is here, and Hal's making decisions on his own, and this is happening so rapidly that none of us are even paying attention, and perhaps won't even notice until AI steps forward as the beast that's going to say, hey, listen, I know more than the entire human race put together. How can you not worship me? Wow, this is something that a lot of us are saying, oh, I would never participate in any of that. I would never take the mark of the beast. Why, if they wanted to put a chip in me or some kind of mark on me, I would reject it right up front. Now, Sue and I were having this conversation the other day because this is something people are really talking about. Now, hang on, hold your horses. They were saying that, if we really keep working on this technology, we're at the point right now where we're already putting chips in people to see how that's going to work, and we're experimenting with that, and it's easy, and it seems like we've got the technology. We can put that chip in your brain. But a lot of us say, oh, no, I would never do that. Never take anything like that into my body. We had this conversation where we have pets. Do you have pets? Do you have children, grandchildren? What would you do to be able to communicate with that little baby that's crying and you don't know what the issue is? How would you like to communicate with your cat or your dog when it seems like they're looking at you with sad eyes and they're barking or they're meowing and trying to communicate something to you, but you just don't know what they need? And I said, I wonder how many folks, even just pet owners, would say, listen, if I could communicate with my pet by you putting a chip in their brain and a chip in mine, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I bet there are a lot of people who that would be the trigger. Really, if I can communicate the way I need to, can you imagine a new parent being told, listen, if you'll just take this chip in your brain, we're going to chip your baby, and you will never have to worry about what the issue is. I'm hungry, my diaper's dirty, whatever. You got this made. And think about how that'll work as your child gets older, and they won't be able to keep any secrets from you. You'll be able to discipline them properly because you'll know everything that they're doing. Aren't these the same kind of hooks that Satan himself would use to get us brought into the beast's system? A system that's going to encompass the entire world, and right now looks like it's well on its way to doing so, just as the Bible said it would. Oh, friends, these are scary, frightening days. But let me tell you the truth behind all of this. They might be scary, and they might be something that makes us pause today, even makes us want to go hide out somewhere and not even watch the news anymore. Let's just disappear up into that mountain cabin until it's all over. Oh, friends, listen, the reason we need to be engaged is so we can share the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ with everybody we possibly can, because our hope, the hope of this world in turmoil, is that Jesus Christ is coming again, just as he promised. He's coming first for his church. Then there's going to be a terrible time in which God's going to have to judge this earth, and then Jesus Christ will rule and reign, just as he promised. Oh, my friends, that's the good news that kind of buffers this bad news we've been looking at today. In fact, it's not even bad news when you recognize that Jesus told us everything ahead of time so that when all these things take place, we would not be afraid, but instead we would trust him through it all. Well, God bless you. You have a great day in the Lord. Worship somewhere with God's people this weekend. I'll be preaching tomorrow at the Piedmont Baptist Church in Chesney, South Carolina at the 11 o'clock worship service. Come join us. We'll have a great time in the Lord together. Or you worship the Lord with his people somewhere, wherever you are. And I'll see you next week, every weekday, as we wake up in God's Word. God bless you.